Hi everyone, welcome to the latest week of our class. You can see we're moving along still. This week we're looking at the new nation and specifically how the new nation comes to build up its financial background, its credit, its debts, and how it takes care of its debts. And specifically, you'll want to consider Hamilton's plans for the United States. We're going to see the first political parties rise up during this time period. But we're also going to see America's foreign affairs develop. And that's something I'm going to want you to pay attention to from now until the end of the class. Because for your final exam will be an essay based on the way that foreign affairs changed, beginning with Washington and ending with the Civil War. So keep that sort of in the back of your mind as we progress through this semester. Sort of going on, we'll also be talking about what's known as the market revolution. And specifically, what this refers to is when the market was revolutionized, in that people began to have more industrialized jobs. People began to work for a salary, not so much themselves anymore. And so you'll want to be paying attention to that in this week's reading from Chapter 9. I have some primary sources I'd like for you to consider here. And specifically, I'm going to have some questions about these on the quiz, so please make sure you do a nice reading of these. This is Washington's statement of neutrality. During his presidency, France was in revolution, and France had requested assistance from the United States. And Washington, after hearing advice from Thomas Jefferson, his Secretary of State, and Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury, Washington sided with Hamilton that the United States should not become involved with the French Revolution, which made Jefferson furious. And so this is Washington's statement saying that the United States would not become involved with the French Revolution. We also have the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, so I'd like you to read this and kind of get a sense of, one, who was a fugitive slave, but also what was the punishment for a northerner or even a white southerner who helped a runaway slave. So be looking into zero in on what the punishment was. In 1796, George Washington decides that he will not seek a third term as President of the United States, and he writes a pretty lengthy letter to the American people. It's over 30 pages. I've condensed it here to, I believe, two pages. Yeah. And so I've taken down most of the important parts, I think, from Washington's letter. So I'd like you to think about what Washington is saying as he says goodbye to the country. Um, Not that he's predicting it, but he stops being president in 1797, and then he dies in 1799. So this really is Washington's last hurrah with the American people. As you're reading this, I'd like you to pay specific attention to what Washington says about foreign affairs and political parties. He's not a fan of either of them. And so I'd like you to zero in on why he does not like political parties and why he does not like foreign entanglements, foreign affairs. The last document here is called On the Equality of the Sexes. And I think, here I am again saying this is one of the most interesting documents that we read, but I know a lot of students really kind of enjoy this reading. Judith Sargent Murray is a woman who was living in the 1790s, and she questions why women have the role that they do. Specifically, she wants to know why women are not educated, and she kind of offers this idea that if women were educated and they could actually show how smart they were, then people wouldn't consider women to not be as intelligent as men. But Judith Sargent Murray argues women might even be shown to be more intelligent than men. So I think you'll enjoy this reading. Most people do. And it kind of lays out her argument for why she thinks women should be educated. So keep that in mind. Again, I will have questions for these documents on this week's quiz, so please make sure you do a nice reading of those documents. I have two more documents I'd like you to read, and they're very short. They come out of the Foner textbook, and they're in Chapter 9. They're called The Voices of Freedom is the first one, and the second one is Harriet L. Noble and the Factory Life as It Is. So this is actually the first one, and this is the second one, and they're on similar pages. One's on the left side, and one's on the right side. I have this video I'd like you to watch about the Erie Canal, which basically concerns the market revolution, and I think you're really going to enjoy this video. It gives you a really nice overview of the canal, how it's built, and specifically what the impact of the canal is on the United States. For this week's discussion, I'd like you to discuss these two readings. And specifically, I'd like you to discuss what is it that you found maybe surprising about women's roles in the market revolution. So you're going to need to cite something from the textbook on a sort of background, and you'll read that in the discussion posting there. I'll have the quiz open Wednesday at noon. It will include questions from Chapter 8, Chapter 9, and these primary sources. And also, your first writing assignment is due this week. And I know things you've just had a writing assignment. Unfortunately, that's just the way the schedule works in this 8-week class. So last week, I had you read all these documents. And so this week, for your writing assignment, I want you to write me a 1,300-word paper that puts these documents into context. Specifically, you're arguing, was this an American Revolution, or was it a war for independence? So if you're saying that the American Revolution was a revolution, you need to use these documents below to prove to me that very widespread change came, that there was an actual revolution, that there was substantial change. Because if you think about it, think of the word revolve. A tire revolves, it goes all the way around. So if this was an American Revolution, consider these documents. Was there really very specific change? If you read these documents and you don't think there was very like humongous change, then you want to argue that this was a war for independence, that essentially America became an independent nation from Great Britain, but everything else when it came to society stayed exactly the same. So if you read these documents and you say to yourself, well, America after the revolution was the same exact as it was before the revolution, your argument is this was a war for independence. But if you read these documents and you say, okay, African Americans had some sort of improvement, women had improvement, maybe Jewish Americans had some improvement, uneducated Americans had improvement. If you read these documents and you see improvement, then your paper should argue that this was a revolution. So consider that as you go to write this. I would highlight this extra credit opportunity. If you make an appointment at the Writing Center to have your paper edited, ask the person who edits it to email me. Most of them have done this, so this is not going to be something new to them, that they edited your paper. And if you do that and your paper doesn't have any major problems with it, I will add 5 points onto your final grade. I do want to say that not a lot of people have taken me up on this in the past 5 or 6 years that I've offered it, but every time that somebody has gone to the Writing Center, they have never gotten below an A- on this paper. So I would highly recommend going to the Writing Center and having them take a look. Here is how I'll be grading your paper. So if you have any questions about how to organize your paper, how to structure your paper, what to include, please definitely look at this document here. So I will be available online through email if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading what you come up with this week. Have a good week.